Hey folks, it's John with KGTropicals.com, bringing you part one in a two-part series about dealing with internal parasites in your aquarium fish. Very common in the hobby, lots of different ways they can get these parasites and lots of different ways to treat them, but I'm going to share with you in this series how I do it, what I do to deal with internal parasites in your fish. So today we're going to talk about what they are and what I do to treat for them, and I'm going to demonstrate for you how I treat for internal parasites. And then in part two, it's going to be kind of a follow-up because I have two fish that I'm going to be treating that came out of the 240 here that I've got isolated in a hospital tank. I'm going to treat those two fish, and so in part two, I'm going to follow up and show you how they're doing now and go through the entire process of exactly what I did throughout that period. It's probably going to be a couple of weeks, maybe even 3 weeks before that one comes out so that we can give all of these treatments a really good chance to set in. So let's first off talk about what internal parasites are. Now, you know me, I don't like to go overboard with all the scientific stuff and get all crazy with it and overwhelm everybody. In fact, it's too overwhelming for me. I like to keep things very simple and straightforward, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in this series. So, internal parasites, what are they? They're bugs that are inside of your fish, and they can basically start to eat your fish from the inside out. This is a very common killer of fish, and there's quite a few different symptoms that can show themselves to you to give you an idea that your fish might have the parasites. That's what we got to talk about now. One of the first signs that you might have a problem is your fish just isn't acting right. I like to use the human analogy in everything else. When you're sick, do you act like your normal self? Most likely not. You don't feel good, you feel groggy. Well, your fish are going to be the same way. You know the way your fish behave. If they're behaving abnormal, if they're hiding a lot more than they normally do, maybe they're not eating, they're looking a little bit frail, they're looking lazy, it's time to react. The next thing to look for, which is very common with internal parasites, is going to be white poop. Yes, we need to examine our fish's poop. A lot of times it'll be a stringy white poop that'll be hanging out of your fish like a kite string. There is no doubt about it. If you see white poop, yes, you need to get off your butt and start doing something. Now, the next thing, there's actually two parts to this. The first is going to be the sunken belly. Now, you have to think about what these parasites are doing. The parasites are feeding off of the food that your fish takes in. So your fish might be eating aggressively, but yet they're still getting skinnier, and that belly is starting to stick in and look nasty, and you're going to start thinking that your fish is starving. Well, it could be that the parasites are eating up all of the food that your fish takes in and not giving any of the nutrients to the fish itself. So the fish is starving, but the little teeny tiny parasites that are inside of that fish's body are not starving. They're fat and happy in there, and we need to get those out. And this is also going to explain the white poop, because the parasites are eating it up and the fish is still expelling it, and it's just useless garbage that's flowing out of them, which I guess fish waste is always useless garbage, isn't it? But anyway, that's what's going on in there. Your fish are eating. I've had fish that are very, very skinny, but they eat like maniacs, and nothing ever seems to get better with them. That's because everything that they take in is being eaten by another source inside of their body. So you need to be aware of that for sure. Also, a lot of people will get a fish like from a fish store, and it'll have that sunken belly a little bit, and they're thinking, oh my God, my fish has a parasite. Or they decide not to buy that fish because it has a parasite and they see it in the fish store. It's not necessarily the case, folks. A lot of pet stores don't feed their fish much, if at all. And so your fish are starving because they've been from the farm to the pet store or even to a distributor in between, and they're not being fed all that much throughout this whole thing because the pet stores want to keep their tanks clean, and it costs a lot of money to feed thousands of fish. So that could be the case. Don't completely panic if you just got your fish and the belly is a little sunken. Fatten them up. Throw some pellets in there, throw some flakes in there, fatten them up, and if they don't fatten up, then we might have a problem. But usually, if they're skinny from the pet store, it could mean that they just need to eat. So if you've had your fish for a while and all of a sudden their belly is starting to get sunken in, there could be a good reason for that. There could be a parasite that's inside that fish's intestines and inside their stomach that's eating up all the food that they take in. And when you see that, it's time to react. So how do we do it? Now, there's a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to how to treat for internal parasites. I'm going to share with you what I do, and I'm actually going to show you what I do, and I'm going to give you a couple of different options too, just in case one particular medication isn't available to you. But I would encourage you to get as much information as you can. Don't just take my word for it. There's a lot of other YouTubers out there that have made great videos on treating for internal parasites. Watch them all, read as many articles as you can, put all that information together and formulate your strategy of how you're going to treat for internal parasites. But I'm going to share with you what I do, and of course all of the products that I'm going to talk about right now that I use regularly are available on our website, KGTropicals.com. If you're in the United States, I can ship all of these out to you right away. I would suggest you have them on hand because you never know when something like this is going to happen. Now, the first decision that you need to make before you implement your treatment plan is, are you going to treat your entire community tank, or are you going to isolate your fish and specifically treat the fish that need to be treated? That's what I like to do if possible, and for me it is possible because I've actually got 4 different tanks that can be used as hospital tanks, but you might not have that. You may need to treat your entire tank. Well, the good news is I'm going to tell you about products that I have here. I'm going to show them all to you. These are all safe to use for fish that even don't need to be medicated. It's not going to hurt them if you do that. But it might hurt your pocketbook a little bit because you're going to need to use a lot of this medication to put enough in there to treat an entire tank. I've been treating this tank for parasites just as kind of a preventative type thing. I've been using Paragard from Seachem. This is one of my favorite products. It's kind of one of those things to put in the tank just in case something might be going on. You can't necessarily see anything, but you want to be sure and treat it every once in a while. This is a great product for that. It is, I don't know if I can show it. Sorry, I'm making all that noise. I don't know if I can show it on here, but it is a dark blue chemical. Don't freak out. Don't panic over that. It's not like it's methylene blue and it's going to turn your entire tank blue. Doesn't necessarily do that, but this is a great product as a preventative, and also if you're just starting to see little signs and you need to treat your entire tank, this bottle right here will go a long way. If you're going to use some of the other powdered medications and stuff like that, you're going to need to use a lot of it to treat the tank. So let's talk about the better way of doing this. Let's talk about isolating the fish and treating them specifically, and not treating all of the fish that don't necessarily need it. Now, when I have a situation going on in here where I've got a fish or several fish that I know have symptoms of internal parasites, I like to isolate them into their own hospital tank and just treat them. Now, again, you can treat the entire tank. I use a 20-gallon tank as a hospital tank, but you might use a 10-gallon or a 5-gallon, whatever it is. If you're treating a 20-gallon tank and you're going to treat the entire tank, that's pretty easy to do, and a box of medication will go a long way. But what I like to do instead is actually medicate the food. The idea is that the food is medicated and it gets taken in by the fish and goes directly where the problem is. It is the best way to just immediately impact those parasites and start to get them cleaned out. There's a few different things that I like to use to do this. Let's start going through the list. The first thing that I like to use, and the first thing that you should put in the tank if you suspect internal parasites, it's easy to do even in a big tank because it's absolutely dirt cheap, Epsom salt. This is a natural laxative for your fish. What do we want to do? We want to clear them out, right? The best way to do that is to give them a laxative. Just like if you were constipated and you needed to release, you would take a laxative. This is going to do the same thing for your fish. Absolutely dirt cheap. I picked this up at the dollar store. A big thing like this for $2. You can even find it cheaper depending on where you go. Doesn't need to be any fancy brand. Doesn't need to be anything. If it's Epsom salt, it'll work. So you're going to put this in at a tablespoon per 10 gallons of water. Now, what I like to do is have a specific little set of measuring spoons available specifically for use in the fish room. Again, pick this up at the dollar store. I think it was actually $1. Now, to put the Epsom salt in, I like to put it in a cup, mix it with aquarium water, let it dissolve, and then pour that in. I mean, you can dump it straight into the tank, but sometimes the fish will try to eat it, and who knows if that's going to be a problem or not. I like to dissolve it and then put it in. And next is to move on to a medication with the Epsom salt. If you catch it early enough, the Epsom salt might do the trick, but I like to go ahead and play on the side of caution and go all in if I suspect a problem. This is when you can start to treat with a product like Paragard. Now, I would treat with Paragard if it was very, very early, there was just very subtle signs that there might be a problem, I'd like to treat with that. But if it's severe and you've got fish that are on their way out, they're withering away to nothing, that's when we need to go to something a little bit more strong. Now, there's two medications that I like to use for this that are straight and to the point, hard medications. Not hard, they're not going to hurt your fish, but they're going to go where they need to go and they're going to do the job. The first is API General Cure. Now, this is a mixture of two different medications, metronidazole and praziquantel. I hope I'm saying that right. This is very, very effective, and a lot of fish keepers actually use this as like a quarantine, or when they get a new fish, they just like to treat it with this just in case. Even though their fish have absolutely no symptoms at all, they'll treat with General Cure. I know Corey at Aquarium Co-op buys this stuff in giant jugs. He treats all of his fish in his store with General Cure. Once again, clear them all out of any kind of parasites or anything like that that they might have in them. There's two different medications in here that will do that, and it will not hurt your fish. If your fish are perfectly healthy and you put this in there, it's not going to hurt them. Definitely a good product to use. The other one, and this is kind of more straight to the point, this is just straight up metronidazole, which is the Metroplex. Yeah, I did pick up the right box. Metroplex from Seachem. This is what we're going to be using today in my hospital tank to treat my fish. I've got General Cure available too, but I've decided to go all in with this one. I absolutely love this product. It's worked wonders for me in the past, so we're going to use this. But we're not going to just throw this into the tank. We're going to mix this up with fish food. We're going to make that fish food all nice and tasty to make sure that the fish eat it. How are we going to do that? Well, that's what we're talking about next. Now, when you mix these medications up with food, even if it's a food that's almost like a treat, like bloodworms, which is what I'm going to use today, it's going to make the food taste kind of nasty for the fish. Think about trying to get your kids to take liquid medications. They're just like, ugh, it's nasty. Well, it's going to be the same way for your fish. So to make it more palatable, I'm going to use two different things just to ensure that it's good to go. The first is Seachem Focus. This is an antibacterial polymer. I had to read it because I knew I was going to stumble all over that. This is something that's going to help to bind the medication to the food and also help make it more palatable for the fish. But we want to make it taste extra good, right? We're going to want to put the medication in there and have the fish eat it like it's a candy bar. That's where this comes in. Everybody knows fish love garlic. You put garlic in food, fish are going to absolutely tear it up. Garlic Guard from Seachem is going to do just that. It's not a medication. This is literally just a flavorant. This is something that you can soak your fish food in if you have picky eaters, and I promise you they'll eat it. Or if you have a medication in the food that makes it taste nasty for the fish, you can put this in there and it'll make it taste good. They'll aggressively go after it because they smell that garlic. They're not vampires. They love it. So soak it in this. You're good to go. Your fish will absolutely tear it up. So let's go ahead over to the other side of the room. I'm going to set everything up and I'm going to show you how I put all of this together, mix it all up, and make a medicated food to feed to my fish. Then we'll feed it to the fish and we'll go ahead and end this episode, and we'll come back in a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and I'll show you how it worked. Okay, so here we are. I've got everything set up here to mix up our food. This is not overly complicated, folks. This is a pretty simple deal here. We're going to mix up two different things. First is we're going to mix up our Epsom salt, and then we're going to mix up the food. Now for the Epsom salt, it couldn't be easier. I've got a tablespoon, little measuring spoon here, and we're going to put 2 tablespoons into this water. Now this is water straight from the aquarium that I'm going to be treating. It's not absolutely necessary to do that, but hey, why not? I'm literally standing right next to the tank that I'm treating. So there you go. There is that. You can stir that up, but I'm going to be letting this sit for a little bit anyway, so this will all be dissolved by the time I'm ready to use it. Going to let this dissolve in here and then just dump it straight into the tank. No big deal. The next thing to talk about here is mixing up the food. What I've done here is I've taken 2 cubes of frozen bloodworms. These are from Cobalt Aquatics. I've been using these for a while. My fish absolutely devour them. So bloodworms are one of those things that almost any fish will take, and they'll take aggressively. So that's a good thing. We want to make sure that this food gets into our fish. So feeding them something that they're going to aggressively go after is a win-win. Now, when it comes to putting in the actual medications, the API, the general cure that we talked about earlier, has these packets in it, which that's great. You can just open the packet, dump it right in, and you're good to go. But we're going to be using Metroplex today from CChem, which is the straight up metronidazole. This is the little package that I showed you earlier, but inside you've got these little cans, and they've got a very convenient little measuring spoon on them right there for dosing out your medications, and it actually recommends 1 scoop to mix with your food. So there we go. I've got a level spoon there. I'm just going to dump it right into those bloodworms, and that's going to be it. Now, when it comes to focus, this is the one that I talked about before that is going to help to bind the medication to the worms, but also make the food more palatable for the fish. Now, I've seen a couple of different directions of use. One of them says to mix focus 5-to-1 with the Metroplex. Ooh, and this one's overfilled, which is a good thing. And then I've also seen it mix it 1-to-1. I'm going to go ahead and go right down the middle, and I'm going to go 2.5 times the focus to 1 of the Metroplex. About a half. That's fine. There we go. So that's what I've done. I mean, again, I've seen 2 different directions, both from CChem. One of them said 1-to-1, the other said 5-to-1. So we'll meet in the middle, and everything's fine. Now, the last ingredient is this garlic guard. Now, let me just tell you something, folks. This stuff stinks. I mean, it is extreme. When you open it, it's, oh, Lord have mercy. It is the most intense garlic smell. If you like the smell of garlic, it'll be like heaven for you, but it is straight up garlic. That's what it is. As far as dosing it goes, the instructions say just soak the food in it. They don't really say how much. So what I'm going to do, whoo, this stuff is strong. I'm going to put a capful in with the food. And hopefully that's going to be enough. Actually, there's a lot in there. I'm going to go ahead and go 2 capfuls. Why not? There we go. Now, I'm going to take my smallest measuring spoon here. Oh, God, that garlic stinks. And I'm just going to mix this all up. Now, again, there's no science behind this. You just mix it up. And eventually everything is going to dissolve into this. And once it's dissolved, we can go ahead and feed it. Now, I'm only feeding 2 fish, which we're going to go look at in a second. So this is actually going to be 2, maybe even 3 feedings for me. But let's go ahead and take a look at the fish, then we'll feed them this. But I'm going to let this sit for about 30 minutes first to really allow everything to soak into that food. And we'll also allow the Epsom salt to do its thing. So let's let this sit for about 30 minutes, and we'll come back, we'll feed it to the fish. Okay, so here we are. I'm at one of my hospital tanks. I've got 2 here. We're actually treating a discus in this one, and then for this one, we've got a sunshine yellow benga, who doesn't look very yellow right now, and a big spot hap. The big spot hap definitely has the sunken belly a little bit. The benga has a little bit, but he's also got some other things going on, and his color is definitely gone. He's just not doing very well. He also does have an issue with one of his eyes, which hopefully the focus will help to take care of that a little bit. It may not. That might be something that I have to treat completely separately, but we want to keep him alive first, right? We want to get whatever's internally out of him, and hopefully when we clear that out, whatever it is that is going on with his eye, he'll be able to fight it a little bit better because he's stronger. But again, if we have to medicate for that later on down the road, we'll do that too. The first thing that I want to do is introduce my Epsom salt. It's been sitting in this water for about 30 minutes. I mean, do you need me to demonstrate this? I'm literally just dumping it in, and I'm going to swish the water through a little bit. It hasn't all completely dissolved, but that's all I'm going to do with that. Now again, some people will mix the Epsom salt with the food. I don't do that. I just put it in there just because I don't want too much going on in there in the food container. I want to just have the Epsom salt separate. I don't know. I mean, mixed up enough for the entire tank. So there we go. The entire tank has been treated with a laxative, but now it's time to move on with the food. And I tell you what I'd rather do here. Let's go close up. Let's get a close-up look at the tank, and then I'll feed them. And hopefully they will aggressively go after this food, because my God, it smells like garlic. Okay, so there you see the Benga is right there, and you can see that he does have the one bad eye. It's not terrible. Hopefully we can get that cleared up too, but we want to get whatever's going on internally with him taken care of first. And I've got my mixture here, which I've been letting sit for about 30 minutes. The entire basement stinks like garlic now. I've got a measuring spoon in here. I'm going to measure up a little bit of it, and I'm just going to dump the whole thing in. And hopefully they go after it like crazy. We'll have to see. There, he's looking at him. He smells it. There he goes. He's going after it. Now, with every single bite that he takes, he's getting some of that medication in every bite. Keep on going, dude. And let's see if the big spot comes out from his hiding spot. He's down there behind the filter. And he was hanging out there before the Benga went in. So that's just kind of like his spot. I'm going to go ahead and get another mix here, or another scoop, and dump her in. And hopefully they both go after it. Come on, turn around, dude. There he goes. Get it! There they go. So they will take this in. Hopefully they'll eat it all. And you can see the particles floating around in the tank. That's just more of that medication that's actually in the water. So the big spot is going through, and he's sucking up all those worms out of the substrate. That's good. They're both going after it. So very exciting. Now this is something that could easily be done in a bare bottom tank. That would make it much easier for the fish to find. But as you see there, they have no problem digging it up and finding those worms that are down in the substrate. So very, very good. Like I said, every single bite that they take, they're getting that medicine inside of them, which is exactly where it needs to be. So there you go. These are both fish that are not feeling all that great. So I wasn't expecting them to just completely go absolutely crazy for the food, but they're doing good because they're eating the big spot. For whatever reason, he will only eat flakes right now. And he's eating these. He's sucking them up off the substrate. So that's a really good sign. That's a good sign that the garlic guard is doing what it's supposed to do, making the food more appealing for these fish. So yeah, I'd say we won that one. Hopefully, yeah, that Benga's trying to get down there and get some more. So yep, let's come back to this after a little while, and we'll see how this medication has done for them. So there you go. My fish are all medicated, and hopefully all of this medication will do exactly what it's supposed to do, and it will clear those parasites out of those fish. And in a few weeks, I'll do a follow-up video and hopefully be showing you that the fish are vibrant, happy, and absolutely healthy, and everything's great. In that video, I'll also talk about everything that I've done from now until making that video, including water changes and things like that. So that's it for this one, folks. Don't forget, once again, this wasn't a big commercial for KGTropicals.com. I mean, most of these medications that you see are available at your local pet store. The Metroplex and the Focus and stuff like that might be a little bit more hard to find, but I would definitely love it if you went over to KGTropicals.com. Order up some of these medications. I'll ship them right out to you, and you'll have them just in case you ever need them. It's much better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them. So if you like what we're doing here, you want to support the channel, head over there. Prices are competitive with everybody else. Just order up some of these products. I'll get them right out to you. And you never know. You might need them, and you'll have them. They'll be ready to go. So thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss the follow-up video. We're all going to want to see that, right? So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you next time.